In response to the Uvalde school shooting, some GOP lawmakers are calling to arm teachers and, quote, harden school safety measures. But Democrats are pushing back, calling for stricter gun regulations.
Since the shooting, security at schools is under a microscope. According to the Texas Tribune, Robb Elementary School had safety procedures in place. And in 2020, the school was given a $69,000 grant meant to help improve physical security. Despite some mixed views on safety, many districts across the U.S. are now reevaluating practices in place. So here to give us some more perspective on school security is Mark Powell, a law enforcement analyst. Mark, welcome to the show. Good morning to you. So what are some of the biggest mistakes you see schools make when it comes to implementing safety measures?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes is one of the most correctable mistakes is locking your door. We all lock our doors at night because we don't want intruders to come into our house. We lock our doors in our cars because we don't want people to enter our vehicles when we're sitting in them. So the first thing that schools need to do is make sure the teachers are properly trained. They have to be properly trained in those kind of procedures. And there are devices that you can wrap around a door handle that allow students to go in and out of the classroom without having to unlock the door or lock the door. And most schools, the way the doors lock is they lock from the outside. So if and let's say an active shooter is on a campus, you don't want the teacher to have to go outside of the classroom to take out a key, find the key, and then lock the door and lock it in. They need to be able to lock that door quickly. And teachers, administrators need to have this kind of active shooting training all the time. And this training needs to be funded. This training needs to be funded by local, state, and federal governments. This needs to be a core function of local government and state government and all of our governments in order to help prevent one of these shootings from happening again.
When we look at this Uvalde shooting, there's been a lot of attention now on this door that was propped open by the teacher, and now we're finding out that it was shut again, but it did not lock. What is your take on all this new information we're learning? Why wasn't it locked? I know investigators are looking at that right now. What might they be looking at?
Well, I mean, that's just another thing that the school administration needs to have the custodian go around and make sure the doors lock properly. They need to make sure that the devices that have the self-locking mechanisms are working properly. This is all part of a comprehensive program that's going to have to be implemented. But not only that, our law enforcement needs to be trained similar to SWAT officers. The law enforcement I'm talking about are school police. Typically, a school police job is considered, well, I'm going to work at a school, and maybe that's a promotional step, being a school resource officer. And when I found out that they did not breach that classroom for an hour, my heart crumbled, being a former law enforcement. These officers should have been trained to go and breach that classroom, get in there as fast as they can, and save the lives of these students and they're hearing gunshots going off. This happened at another school shooting where one of the resource officers waited on the outside of the building and just sat there. Law enforcement needs special training. They need the funding for this training. Being a school police officer is no longer a job where you can say, well, I'm just a school police officer. You need to be trained in the same tactics that SWAT officers are trained. You don't have to wait for an hour for a Border Patrol special unit to show up to breach the door. They should have breached that door right away.
Right. So you've mentioned a training program a few times when we're talking about teachers and school resource officers. Where is this program coming from? Is it provided by the district? Is it the state? Where do we set these wheels in motion?
That's an excellent question. So what you'll find in typically with school districts, most school districts aren't big enough to have their own police department. So what they do is they contract out a school resource officer from a law enforcement agency. So what the way it works is the school budget, the school district pays the sheriff or the police department to hire these police officers to work. That needs to change. The state, federal, and local government needs to actively recruit police officers that their main job is school safety. And it doesn't necessarily have to be only police officers. You can have well-trained security personnel that can also be there, and that can be done multiple ways. It can also be done in a volunteer program where you have reserve police officers or you have ex-law enforcement that are trained in these types of things that can work part-time at schools, because we know with all of the defunding police movement and all of the movements to remove police officers from campus, well, guess what? That just doesn't work. We have to stop defunding the police. We have to stop saying we don't need police officers on campus. If anything, we need more police officers on campus. However, they don't need to be an occupying force or a militaristic force. They need to be the people on the campus that connect with the students so the students feel comfortable so they can report it.
When you say more police on campus, what number pops in your head? For if you're looking at a community of Uvalde of like 16,000 people, I don't know the population
600 in the school.
600 in the school. How many police officers are we talking about? Because there is concern that in the same vein of arming teachers, if you're putting just the presence of law enforcement, that you're creating a culture of fear on campus. Is that something that we just have to live with now and kids have to go through when they go to school?
Yes, there already is a culture of fear. When you see advertisements for parents to buy bulletproof backpacks, that's a culture of fear. You know, these kids, they all have TikTok, they all have social media. They know what's going on. And I'm talking about even in the elementary schools. They know that there's school shootings. They know that they're not safe. They have to go through active shooting drills. They go through earthquake drills in California. They used to have these drills where you duck and cover and go under your desk in an earthquake. So you're going to have to, like, we have to change the way we're doing this, because what we're doing is just not working. And I'd rather have kids a little more concerned about safety on campus than have another one of these just heart-wrenching stories when you hear about what happened. And this is also on a much larger picture. We need to start addressing student mental health in a serious way. We need to have counselors on this campus. You can't have a ratio of counselors 500 to 1. That's what the ratio is in some of these districts here out in California. We need to make sure that the counselors are talking to the kids and can say to law enforcement, hey, so-and-so is acting a little bit strange, and you may need to take a look at him.
Right. All right, Mark Powell, law enforcement analyst, thank you so much for your time and unpacking this for us. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.